Good morning and God bless. And if I only have you for a few seconds, here's my wish for you and the rest of your life. My wish and my hope and my prayer is that you take a risk. Take a risk with your life. Take a risk. Make it bold. Make it daring. Make it scary. Make it beautiful. But take it. Because a lot of what we'll talk about today is the reality around why we are risk adverse as a culture, especially if you're from the culture I was raised and sort of indoctrinated into, the poverty driven, generationally cursed realities of life. I'm not here to knock it. I'm not here to throw shade or dirt on it. I just want to speak some of the realities I believe in and what I'm learning around it. And what I'm going to describe this as is essentially the peasant mindset. So if you're from any kind of poverty derived environment, I'll again share that I'm from the South Bronx. I grew up in the projects, and that life is that life. There's just a lot of risk adverse folks. Then there are some risk tolerant folks. It's just that unfortunately, a lot of the risks we take from the areas I'm from don't have longevity assigned to it or tied to it. But also, quite ironically, those who take some of those risks that come with a very short shelf life have to learn a lot of things that scale in business and in other areas where if you could apply that risk, you probably see a lot of fruit. You would. I would say that I've been quite successful in my life applying the logic that I learned from the street environment I was raised in. It offers a tremendous amount of knowledge. My grandfather, who I talked about in an episode today that I recorded and it should drop tomorrow, he was very uncomfortable with his book knowledge, massively street smart, always encouraged street smarts, would always say, I'm probably not going to be able to teach you to read and write and how to add, but I could teach you how to walk and survive. And that's big, survival. A lot of us, if you're in my age demographic, and even today, that word survival is taglined with different realities associated, respective to how we survive and the struggle that permeates from it. Nonetheless, let's get into this peasant mindset situation and not judge. That's part of what I'm learning too. I thank God that the more risk tolerant I invest my spirit, or that I subscribe to spiritually and emotionally and psychologically, the less I really want to judge, the more I want to eliminate hate and condemnation and knocking anybody, because this thing is hard. This thing is hard. This thing we call life is very hard for a multitude of reasons. Let's get a little busy on the formalities here. You were born with God in your lungs and risk in your bones. You were born with God in your lungs and risk in your bones. But somebody rewrote your story before you took your first real breath. So let's talk about what got erased. Let's talk about why you don't take the shot and why you miss every shot you don't take. Why you might second guess the move. Why you plan everything to death and then plan that plan into oblivion. Let's talk about the program they installed before you even had a name. If there's anything I can offer, we are all asleep, especially if you're like me from where I'm from, and it's time to wake up. I read something today that really sparked this. I had this down. I had journaled about the peasant mindset and fleshed it out. I got a series, actually. It's going to be 5 to 6 episodes. Almost about a month ago now, but I'm consistently reflecting and consistently reflecting and consistently reflecting. And one of the things that hit me today while I was reading, I was reading about sort of the evolution into prosperity, for lack of a better term, and just to contextualize. And the reality around any sort of big business, any sort of structured scenario that is prosperous, any level of abundance, is that efficiency efficiency is always going to be key. The more efficient you are, the higher return on investment. You want to have the lowest amount of input for the highest amount of output, right? I put $1, I want $2 back, right? That's why in the business space, in the professional space, especially folks from my demographic and background, I urge them into some sort of level of management. Why? Because now they pay you for you and everybody else you manage. So you might see it as you're doing more work. You're not. You are in different ways, but you're investing more because they're multiplying you. You are responsible for 10 people. Effectively, your paycheck now reflects somebody who's responsible for 11 people when you include yourself. So efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. Sometimes risk doesn't seem very efficient. Sometimes being risk averse trends us towards survival, very, very comfortable. We get pleasure from comfort. So our minds are more efficient. Our minds, our consciousness is more efficient when it has to think less. So if efficiency is key and our minds are more efficient when they think less, it means that our minds and our consciousness are reacting to code. And if you did any sort of research on how consciousness works and how thoughts work, you cannot be that conscious for longer than 5% of your time. I'm arguing that I'm getting close to 10%. I feel like I'm never in my subconscious state, but that's impossible. That's just me being conscious about my consciousness. I certainly flow. Like right now, I'm not thinking about speaking. In fact, now that I say that, I'm thinking about speaking, and I don't want to think about speaking because that's when I sort of break down. It's natural. You don't want to think about it. If you're going to cross the bridge, you cross the bridge. You want to look down at what you're walking over, you might fall, right? So the reality around it is we were born to be risk tolerant. We were trained to be risk averse. We are more efficient when we think less, so we're reacting to code, right? Let's think about this. You and I were not born fearful. We were not born fearful. There are countless videos, I'm fascinated by these, where they explain how fear is taught. If you consider what you're fearful of today, ask yourself, why are you afraid of it? So you weren't born fearful, you were taught survival. Now here's what's crazy. The more you practice survival and the longer you live in it, the more spiritual it feels. I gotta survive, I gotta pay these bills, I gotta get by. You start to feel like, bet, I'm doing it. It's part of my spirit, it's part of my reality. I'm doing what God asked me to do. But I gotta be all the way real. What you call wisdom is what I call peasant programming. Hand-me-down obedience passed from bodies that couldn't afford to die, quite literally. The ancestors of all our ancestors that transitioned into some sort of revolution and evolution and started to make profit off of their lives. They needed food to survive. They would give up essentially their entire spirit, their entire existence, just to ensure they could eat and survive. Now, mind you, there was nothing really consciously that was ever expanded from a wisdom perspective, a knowledge perspective, to help sort of battle that mindset. So what do? Efficiency. Efficiency. They trained you not to live because they couldn't afford to die. And those who were training, those who were more conscious, those who were the early adopters of understanding how to profit, they capitalized. That ain't your fault. It ain't your fault. If you needed to hear somebody tell you wherever you at today in your life is not your fault, cool, here it goes. It ain't your fault. But it is your consequence. It's not your fault, but it is your consequence. Those are the cards you were dealt. Yo, Jeff, here you go. Where you want to be born at? South Bronx. Nah, I didn't work like that. Here you go in the 80s, crack cocaine era. Nope, didn't work like that. I just, boom, I got deposited into that reality, into that realm, into that life stream. That's now my consequence. Not my fault, not your fault, but it is your consequence. And you think about it. If our great great ancestors had to bow our heads to survive, or bow their heads to survive, it's likely that your blood was taught to flinch at vision. So now I want to apply this to what I believe is a massive reflection for me, right? If this is my consequence and I didn't inherit it, it was sort of subscribed to me and prescribed to me, then my operating system, my entire existence in the way in the realm of consciousness was not mine, was not programmed by me. That too was inherited, downloaded, structured for smallness. So if I'm in an environment that is risk adverse, that is not exposed to higher levels of consciousness, that is poverty derived versus abundant driven, conscious, expansive, and risk tolerant, I am now structured for smallness. And the reality in these environments, when we try to appease ourselves emotionally, we call it some sort of humility. This is why I'm at. This is what I was given. I should be grateful enough to have this job, make this money. You should. You should. But there's nothing about gratitude that says you should stay there when it's no longer serving you. Yes, when you needed it, you had to go get it. You got into that role. You got into that relationship. You paused something that you really wanted to do because life hits. So you humbled yourself. You also, the reality also is this, yo. If we are raised in a poverty-driven, conscious environment, how much consciousness is provided to you towards growth? It's likely minimal. Because their conscious and its conscious has been hijacked. It's not humble to accept humble receivings in the abundant, infinite space and world and realm of God. Your consequence, you stay there. Wasn't your fault that got you there. It is your fault if you stay there. It is not humble to just want enough. It is not humble to just be grateful to just get by. It is not humble to pray to be saved and wait and wait and wait. Many generations have done that. See where you're at and go through your family tree. You don't got to climb the whole tree, but go a little back and figure out how you got to where you're at and see that you're not just destined to stay right there if you just keep doing exactly what you're doing. It's illogical. You're basically waiting on a lottery ticket. What are the odds of a lottery ticket? You got to take a risk. You got to take a risk. I'm learning. And I've always felt this way. I've never been able to put it together consciously and rationalize it. Never really had God to help me expand upon it. But risk is sacred. Risk is sacred, not reckless, definitely not stupid. Sacred. You want to reference the book? I talk about Moses. I love Moses. The Pharaoh had called for men or young children of his background to essentially be excommunicated. He was left out in a river. He was found by royalty. He was raised under the Pharaoh. He was accepted. He had richness. Saw somebody get beat, killed the dude that was beating him. If you don't know enough about the story of Moses, he went on to what? You could just at minimum, he wrote the 10 Commandments, spoke directly to God. I don't know that there's many areas in the book where you see that God revealed himself. God revealed himself directly to Moses. He took a risk. He took a risk. He had more than a lot of us have on paper, on surface, and risked it. That's another thing. You think, oh, I don't have a lot. It's reckless. No, you don't have a lot. You accept you don't have a lot. You're going to keep accepting you don't have a lot. It's more risky to do nothing with nothing. Go do something. The first step to resurrection isn't faith. It's unlearning. That's the biggest tool that I misused and didn't understand. If I only stay in proximity of where I was raised and what I was exposed to, I will only ever learn the proximity of what I was raised and what I was exposed to in. If I stay on the block, I just become the block. It doesn't mean I can't always enjoy and have the block in my code and my fabric. I can never forget the block, but I take it with me. I don't stay there. Why? Wasn't conducive to high risk, high reward. It was low risk, low level of faith. Kind of gets whacked when you live check to check and the check ain't that big. Kind of gets whacked when you're so far down in the hierarchy, they don't even know who's taking orders. They cut those people. That's the peasants. There's too many at the entry level. But I had to unlearn. I had to unlearn what was given to me, what I inherited. Not your fault, but it is your consequence. So I'm learning. There's a multitude of things. But if you were raised in survival, you'll mistake fear for God. And you think playing it safe is obedience. Why do you fear God? Why do you fear condemnation? Why do you fear burning in a place nobody has ever been able to make it to and tell you explicitly about? When's the last conversation you had with somebody who has died and told you what happens when you die? When's the last time you actually saw somebody get struck down by God? When's the last time somebody who didn't receive everything, pick a lane. It's amazing when something great happens. Oh my God, thank you, God. What are you scared of? Why can't you pray in a way that is not for saving, that is for the demanding through your consciousness, through your spirit, that you are of God and God will give you everything you want? You don't even have the courage to ask. You think playing this safe is obedience. Cool. Here's a move you can make. Presuming, of course, you think anything I said has any value. Audit your next decision. Audit your very next decision. And before you ask, what's the smart choice? Ask this. Is this still fear wearing a new outfit? Before you justify the safety net, ask yourself, who taught me to hate my wings? And before you say no to the next big leap, ask if it's really God or just your ancestors' ghosts whispering, don't get killed. Don't lose that job you hate. Don't run from that relationship that's giving you nothing. Some of us, the return on investment of our lives is so minimal. We're in a deficit. What is the return on investment for your time, for your spirit, for your consciousness? It's negligent. It's not even zero. It's not even that level set. It's not even baseline. You are in the negative. You're in the red. You're so worried and so fearful about taking a risk. You're walking dead. You're awake but asleep. You're conscious but stagnant, stale, rotting, in stasis. You haven't moved in forever. You don't even know what it feels like to move anymore. I've been there. As I was moving, still staying still. Gaining in other areas, losing massive deficits in others. Some things I can never get back. Some things that only I know, that I have to pray and thank God that only I know these things that I got to live with. But I had to unlearn. I'm not just here to survive, man. Prosperity is something very different. Abundance is available to everybody. If you want to do a little homework and research to inspire yourself, look how people used to live. And the people who used to live this way are tied to you somehow. If not directly rooted in your tree, they created the environment that you live in today. And it permeates. And those who have been in prosperity and in control will maintain prosperity and control, not because they're the devil or because they're evil, but because we submit, we surrender, we give it up to survive. But I don't think we were just built to survive. We were built to resurrect. Risk it for the biscuit. That's the language of resurrection. So take a risk today. Take a risk. Make it big. Hopefully you fall on your face and you get back up. And you put a risk on top of that risk until the risk pays out exactly what you are seeking. God didn't intend you to be broke. God didn't intend you to be emotionally illiterate, financially illiterate, physically illiterate. Fluency. You are entitled to abundance. You are entitled to prosperity if you bustle work, put in the diligence, and take a risk. You own it or be owned by it. You either run the system or the system runs you. Change your mind, change your life. I am who I say I am. Do you and stay rich.